Hey, what's up, Zach here, and today I've got the all-new Anta Kai 2. Let's get into them. And thanks to Kickzone for sending me a pair of these to check out, especially because Anta did not deem me worthy enough to buy from them the day they released, so huge thanks to Kickzone for getting me a pair of these. If you want to check out a pair for yourself, I'll leave a link to them in the description below, as well as a discount code. All right, now starting off in the uppers, there is a whole host of things going on in these, much of which I absolutely love. Now, number one, the entire body of the uppers, it's basically like a ballistic nylon or engineered mesh. Typically, it's a polyester plus nylon. Super tough and rugged, but does break in surprisingly well after a day or two. It gets you a pretty nice lockdown. And then in the toe cap, you actually get these like TPU weaves that come through here on the microscope. Just looks absolutely amazing. And then as you go up toward the lace line, what actually borders the lace line is another TPU cage that goes all the way around from the toe box of shoe up into the most proximal lace eyelet. Now the laces are actually central to that cage, but when you tie them down, because they're right adjacent to it, it does give you quite a feeling of lockdown on the dorsal part of your foot, right, the top part of that midfoot. Really feels kind of confidence inducing. Now, you do not get a runner's knot in these things. Interesting thing is the entirety of the lace line is, like I said, central to that cage, but then the last lace eyelet is actually external to the cage. So it does, like I said, lock it down pretty well. And then you do get a mixture of just integrated lace eyelets in that synthetic leather, and then some roping there, which is really nice. As you go into the rear foot, you just get a massive amount of padding around the heel counter and ankle collar. The heel counter, number one, you get a double heel counter, but it's both internal. It's really hard to get through. That first one is just pretty standard plastic, but then it's almost like a rubbery plastic external to that, and you actually see a bunch of glue in there too, which is kind of weird, but I mean, it does the job. It is just super strong. Now, with these things, heel slippage was mild if I had an orthotic in there or not, really did not change. The tongue does have a pretty low gusset, but it is, you know, it's a strong material. And the tongue does have a pretty decent layer of dense padding to it. Nothing crazy. And that padding goes into the forefoot where you do get kind of mesh padding, and then like an independent layer of padding as well. Now, on the heat mapping of this thing, I thought these were just gonna heat up like crazy. Really couldn't be further from the truth. They only heated up 75.05 degrees. And when you look at the images, those thermal images, you can kind of see that the whole upper is radiating heat out of there. So the materials itself, they're just handling heat pretty well. The same cannot be said for moisture. The only place that fog was getting out of these things was the lace holes, basically, and around the gusset of the tongue. So they're gonna hold on to moisture pretty good, it seems like, but in terms of at least heat egress, they do a much better job than you think they're gonna do. Now look at these on the upper durability test, 10 second ties grit sandpaper. Now the burr does start working these little tubules, and it does start working the mesh. It does not get through it though, just makes it look pretty weird. You do get a decent amount of rubber that comes up over there. And I think on indoor courts, I don't know if the friction gets high enough just because of the nature of the material. So I think as long as you're keeping them off really gritty outdoor courts, I still think you'd be okay. All right, but getting into the midsole teardown, these really remind me of the Lacoste AGLT 23 Ultra in the tennis space, where you do get a pretty low stack of foam, but what's underneath of you is just engineered so well. Doesn't matter, so you can actually get lower to the ground while not sacrificing. It's really nice. So underfoot, you have a near full bed of Nitro Edge foam. You do have a carrier foam that runs around it, but centrally it's all Nitro Edge foam. And then you have a top-loaded shank, which does appear to be composite. I mean, it's really stiff, much stiffer than TPU. And then it does have fibers that were popping out as I was cutting through it. On the microscope, you can kind of see some like gluing in there, it looks like. So I'm not sure if it's like a nylon composite, carbon fiber composite with TPU, I'm not really sure, but it does seem to be, like I said, much stiffer than a traditional TPU shank. Look at this thing on the bounce height test. 43 centimeters in the rear foot, 41 in the forefoot. That's really no surprise for, you know, a nitrogen infused supercritical foam. And on foot, these really do feel like bounce houses. They just feel easy in terms of bounce. They feel really easy in terms of transitioning steps. So in terms of first step launch, or in terms of just kind of popping up off the ground, they just feel very nimble while also feeling like they have, like you got a pogo stick underneath of you. So all in all, top loaded shank plus the really lively foam, plus just kind of the shape of the midsole and kind of how it just bounds off the ground. Really, really easy shoe to pop up off the ground, as well as kind of launch from first step or launch from more compromised positions. All right, but getting into the outsole tread, it's just multi-directional pattern. There are a lot of razor etches in the forefoot on each line of tread, and then in the rear foot, it becomes a little bit more wavy. like I said, with new rubber compounds and as well as, other types of material compounds we're using for outsoles, doesn't really matter what the tread is as long as it's multi-directional, and this is. I'm looking at it on the grip test ramp. It slips at 38 degrees, which isn't the highest I've ever seen. It's upper end of normal. And it does pick up, dust and dirt decently. However, in terms of dynamic grip, I never slipped out on these things, never had anything but confidence in them. And that's another reason why push off is so easy, especially from compromised positions. If you look at who the shoe is designed for, you kind of tell, why the shoe has the characteristics it does. Because Kyrie Irving gets so low to the ground. A lot of times he's pushing off from such weird positions, right? And he's only using certain parts of the shoe sometimes. And so it, stands to reason that this shoe wants to be able to push off very easily from very compromised positions. And you do have that rolled rubber going up on the medial side, which allows a lot easier transition of step. I love rolled rubber. But in these ones, because it grips so well and because that Nitro Edge foam can kind of pop from a lot of different positions, this is kind of the perfect shoe for that kind of game. So it is nice to see when a shoe is actually a signature shoe for someone's actual signature footwork, which is really, really cool. And these things on the speed ratio, they come in at a 2.82, shank score of 0.2, bumps it up to a 3.02. I think that's exactly where they belong. They do belong in the category of a lot of faster running shoes, not only for kind of quick side to side speed, north to south speed, push off power, really anything. Like I said, once again, that combination of just the geometry of the shoe, as well as what it's made of, really is kind of perfect for, like I said, speed in pretty much every category. And look at the outsole durability test, 10 seconds high grit sandpaper. I mean, the durometer is not high on these whatsoever, but I didn't get a millimeter of damage on these. And I mean, the rubber kind of, like I said, feels soft, kind of is soft. So I think if you don't produce a ton of friction, I think you can take these outdoors, number one, because they're so protective against outdoor courts. So if you want to shoot it's more low to the ground, they will be pretty protective against those outdoor courts. I think you're going to rip up the uppers a little bit, but in terms of how easily they transition step, I think that, just like I said, once again, the geometry of the shoe would allow maybe a little bit smoother steps on outdoor courts. So maybe you don't wear down the rubber as fast because of how they allow you to move. They're still best for indoor courts, put it that way, but I do think you probably could get away with outdoor courts as long as you're not dragging and sliding like crazy. I'll be getting into the fit of the Kai 2. They are pretty generous in everything besides the inflare. These do have a 13-degree inflare, which is getting up there, and you wouldn't really notice it because front part of the shoe is a little more bulbous, doesn't taper that hard, but the inflare is there. Now, number one, these have a resting everted position of 1 degree everted. That goes up to 4 degrees with loading. It's really just on the upper edge of normal. Remember, these don't really have a crazy lateral flange. So you need a little bit more of that eversion so that these things won't become ankle spraining machines. So that's, another reason why that's there, but obviously not terrible. These do come in at 28.7 centimeters in length, 9.8 centimeters in the metatarsals, and then 10.8 centimeters of toe box width. They only taper though 25 degrees. So really in everything but the inflare, they are pretty forgiving. The one thing I noticed though is because the uppers are so bulbous or so much there, they still do feel pretty bulky. I'd still say a narrow medium foot. You can go true to size on these. If you are narrow, you might want to go down a half size just to get a little bit more of a glove-like fit. I think you can. Medium and 2E, I'd probably just go true to size. A 4E, I'd just be going up 1/2 size in these just because I think more than that, you probably will start slipping out of them. And in terms of people I'd be recommending these for, these ones, I mean, Anta with, Clay's new shoes too, it's hard to think of someone that you wouldn't want to recommend these for. Number one, people that want a little bit of a lower drop in a shoe, as well as a little bit of a lower stack height without going full minimalist or full barefoot. These really kind of straddle that line to where I think this is kind of the sweet spot. This is where I think getting the lower stack, not a crazy drop, being low to the ground while being able to feel the ground while not pummeling through the ground, I think this is perfect. You can put an orthotic in there and kind of augment that drop if you want. You can kind of cradle the heel, you can kind of cradle the arch, things like that. In terms of ball of foot pain for someone that maybe wants to get lower to the ground, these are really perfect, right? Someone just wants to have that feel. Are they the best thing in the world for ankle sprainers? I still don't think they're the greatest thing on planet Earth. I don't think they're bad by any means. I just think if you start going laterally, because there's not much to stop you, they could go, but like I said, because they put you a little bit more evert, especially with loading, like I said, they're okay. If you want a shifty shoe for a ton of speed going north to south or side to side, This is really it. I mean, honestly, it's tough to find many faults with these. I think it's the lateral flange. Maybe people that sweat a lot in their shoes, they're gonna need to bring a pair of socks for them. Other than that though, these are a pretty all around, very, I'd say, well-balanced shoe is the term I would use, because you just feel so well balanced in them on foot, while also being able to, you know, they also feel very shifty, but also just very, very well balanced. So like I said, it's hard to find faults in these. There are a couple, but few and far between. So I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. If you like these more than the Kai 1, if you're interested in them more than the Kai 1, I like these more than the Kai 1 personally, even though they don't have the dorsal retention strap. I think everything else about them, just kind of the feel underfoot, I do personally like a little bit more. So I'd love to hear what you have to say in the comments down below. And if you want to see another recent shoe I just reviewed that honestly, it's hard to find a ton of fault with, the Leaning JB3 going to the knife, make sure you click into this video up above and subscribe down below. Respect your Arbor and foam. I'll see you somewhere in the Sneakerverse.